back. And this time I'm painting. Oh, why is that crooked? I'm going to be painting good old Mr. Scarecrow. So, all right. I'm working on a 12 by 16 canvas. I'm going to be using a larger brush. You might be able to get away with using the smaller of the square brushes that we have, it's like in between the big and the small. That size might work. You're going to need a little round for details, and you're going to need your filbert for blending. Colors are yellow, red, I think, I don't know, we'll see if we can just get away with the cobalt blue. We might be able to. I don't know, we might need the dark blue too. Black, white, and brown, okay? All right, so where we're gonna start is, I would give them some baby wipes. They're gonna need baby wipes and chalk as well to sketch. So I'm just gonna use paper towel because we're gonna put the brown underpainting on here. And baby wipes work great for that. I'm just going to use a moist paper towel. So we're just going to take our brown and start working this over the entire canvas. I'm just working in these up and down strokes, so we're already kind of starting that pattern of the corn. This does not have to be like a super heavy coat. We're just putting down a coat of color that we can then sketch on. With chalk. And we'll be coming in on top of this later with a little bit of darker color. Okay, so you can see it's not gorgeous or anything, it's just brown. And now, just gonna take a dry piece. I had to go pretty heavy with mine because of the gesso. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to sketch. Where I'm going to start is with our little scarecrow head. And we want the scarecrow to take up a nice section. We want to leave some room down here for the hay around his neck. But we want him to take up a nice center section of this canvas. flatten out the sides just a little bit. Okay. So we're just going to get that basic shape in there. Then I'm going to come down here in the center. I'm going to make a center line. Now, if they need to erase, have them moisten one of the bigger brushes, and they can just use that as an eraser. So I'm going to do my center line, and then I'm going to do a couple little sections in this pumpkin. So, like so. All right, and so from there, now what we're going to do is we're going to do the hat. So our hat is going to come right cut across the head, and we're going to wave it around, and it's going to come off the edges, and then it's just going to kind of do a nice little curve up above the pumpkin head just a little bit, and there we've got the brim of the hat. So if I erase those lines, we've got our brim. And now we just gotta finish off the top of the hat. So top of my hat, they can kind of make it look kind of old and messed up if they want. And there we go. I am going to throw on that little ribbon, whatever you call that. And over here on this side is where our sunflower is going to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and really quickly kind of sketch in a circle and then a little outer circle around it. So it's just going to look like a donut. And that's our basic sketch right there. Okay. So let's go ahead. I think I'm going to have us paint in, let's see, what should we paint in first? I'm thinking maybe we should go ahead and start on the flower and the pumpkin. So for that flower, I'm gonna mix up a nice pale yellow. Want plenty of white. And I'm going to have them start kind of with a north, south, east, west. Take those little petals, north, south, and east, west. And just trying to stay in the donut. And then we're just going to start filling them in. So I'm going to make my petals just a little bit bigger. I'm going to fill in between those. And then squeeze in a few in between those. Kind of cutting or peeking their little sunflower faces out in between. Bingo. Bingo. Hi, buddy. Hi. Okay. Now I know where that's at, where that's going to live. I can go ahead and I'll worry about the center and everything and all the details of it later. All right, so now I'm going to move down. I'm going to put in the base coat for Mr. Pumpkin, Mr. Scarecrow. So I'm going to make an orange, nice bright orange. I'm going to add a little bit of white. And we're going to do a base coat in here. This is why I was saying maybe that middle-sized square brush might work, because there are some pretty big areas that they have to fill in. And it fills them in pretty nice. Where's this? I don't know. It might be a little too big. Maybe not. I guess it wasn't really important to put those pumpkin sections in there right now because we're just painting it in a basic color. But the brown underpainting kind of helps tone this pumpkin and give it some shadow. All right, there's our base coat for that. Our hat is already toned brown, so we don't really have to do too much to the hat. So now what I'm going to have us do is just work on that darker background behind the pumpkin. And I would use the bigger brush for this and just kind of mix up a little bit of brown, a little bit of black. And I'm going to streak some other colors in there too. I'm going to put just a small amount of white in there. and then we're going to, bingo. Just gonna come in here and really loosely just work this in. We'll be adding some more colors in the sunflowers, so if they accidentally get a little smudge in there, it's not the end of the world. You can leave a little bit of that brown barrier kind of peeking around those flowers too, so totally okay. Now when I get down here to the neck area and the bottom of the canvas, I am going to use a little bit more black. So just going to keep working on up here high. It doesn't have to be like perfectly blended in or anything. It can look streaky. You know, like I said, down here we're going to go a little bit darker, so I'm going to grab a bit more black and add it to my color mixture. Blending that up in there. You can come in here and really kind of cut in a little bit more. All right. Now I'm going to make kind of a green hue, dark green, yellow, my dark blue. Yeah, the dark blue is going to have to be the color. The cobalt just won't make this color. Dark blue, green, or yellow, and a little bit of white. Let's see how this looks. So I'm going to start, it's pretty bright. I'm going to add just a bit of brown to that to tone it down just a little bit. There we go, it's a little better. So just gonna bring in like, so just gonna look like some stalks of corn kind of behind him, and just foliage, leaves coming off the stalks. Just very messy. Okay. Yep. And kind of lighten up that color and add a few. I guess I'm probably kind of using the wrong brush for this, but just adding a couple highlights here and there. Just some different random stuff going on. You could add a little bit more yellow to the green. Just really messy. Okay. Actually, this bigger brush kind of works. Let's see. Let's work on let this kind of dry up just a little bit, and I'm going to work on that band around the hat. So I'm going to take a little black, a smidge of white, so it's not pure black. And I'm just going to work that in. And they might need to switch over to their smaller brush, like the smaller filbert for this. Just kind of have to work it in between those petals. All right. I've got most everything pretty much kind of color blocked in. The last thing I'm going to do right now is come in and I'm going to use some, oh, I need more white. I'm going to make the hay around his neck. So I'm first going to start out with a little light brown, medium brown, and I'm just going to use my big brush still, and we're just going to start pulling, crisscrossing crisscrossing, pulling down some lines in the brown, and then we'll go lighter and lighter. Okay. So now I'm going to go in with a little bit of yellow, maybe like an orange. Ooh, I got purple in there. Where'd that come from? Maybe add a little bit more yellow to my orange so it's not bright yellow. Add a bunch of white to it. You could even add just a touch of brown if you want to tone it down a little bit. And we're going to use this. Kind of do the same thing. And then last but not least, we'll use a little bit of white. Just as a highlight here and there. All right, I can come and play with that a little bit more later, but for now, I'm gonna call that good, and it would be pretty much dry time at this point. So, I don't know, I'm just coming in with a little bit more dark here and there in this background. And then we'll dry. All right. Okay, I got a little paint or water on my canvas. Let's touch that real quick. Where's it on? All right, better. All right, so now, let's see. Let's start back up towards the top and start working on some details of the hat. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with some brown. And we're going to form like these little lines, and we don't want them to be straight, perfect lines. We want them to be kind of curvy. I'm using a little flat or little filbert for this. So our lines are going to go up and they're going to go down. And I'm going to do this on the brim and on the top. Okay. And then here on this one side, we've got like a little patch, and I'm just gonna lay that in there real quick. So I'm gonna take some black, a little brown, and I'm gonna put my patch like right here. I kind of want to smudge that out a little bit. So they could use like a little piece of paper towel. They could also use a dry brush to do it, or they can use their finger to like smudge that out and soften that line out around the edge, just so it looks kind of old and worn and tattered looking. All right, and then we've got some details in the hat, like that little ribbon. So I'm just going to make up a white and blue. I'm sticking to the dark blue for the moment. No, I think I'm making purple. There we go. All right, and same thing, I'm gonna come in here. Got some lines. Oh, it's like a little plaid. Plaid print. And these are not like perfectly like clean lines by any means, because we're gonna come in later with some white. Once that patch is a little dry, they could come in here and just give that a little light touch of that blue as well. Okay. And then let's work on our flower a little bit more. So I'm just going to play with the pale yellow and some of the brighter yellow. Just going to come in here and add a few little streaks with either or both into our sunflower. A few more streaks of those. That moves it brighten up a little bit, and then you can take just a little bit of white and just lightly kind of hit some of the tips. And then we will go ahead and fill in the center. Center will be black and brown, really dark. I'm using a little round for this, for the flower. Okay, do that, and then I'm also going to use that same dark color just to pull out a few little shadows onto the petals, just little tiny baby strokes. All right, and we'll give that center of the flower a little bit of, just a little touch of some brown and white. Just gonna come in here and kind of lightly dot, 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 dot around this one edge here. Making the highlight a little brighter on one side. Kind of pounce it around with your finger a little bit, smudge it in. It mixes in with that black and kind of makes a nice little highlight. Okay, so we'll do that, and then I just like to come in just a little bit brighter and do some dots and leave them. So it's really important with this painting, because all the detail is in the second half, is to get that base on, get it on quick, get it dried, so that they have more time for all of this. All right, so there's our sunflower. Now, let's work on, oh shoot, you know what? When I did the hay, I didn't do it out the sides over here, so that should have been done. Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna come back in. I'm gonna make these lines again. So I got one right down the center, and then just a couple more on each side. All right, so our nose is gonna go right here, centered on the center line. Our eyes, I like to have them kind of leaning out to the sides. And And then he just has like a little wiggly mouth, but I'm not going to worry about the mouth right now because we have to do the shadowing first. So, all right, so let's get into our shadowing. I'm going to take, and my plate is a mess. I'm going to take a little brown, touch of black, I'm going to use my blendy brush, and I'm going to come down on my little pumpkin lines and add my line, and then just kind of use that brush, or they could use the baby wipe to soften those lines. I got one here in the center. All right, so that one's coming down the center. We're also going to be adding this nice dark shadow coming down from the hat. So I'm just gonna do a little stroke downwards, run it that dark line along that edge, and then stroke it down using very little paint. And our shadow is going to come down around the sides of the nose. So they just really have to not use a lot of paint on their brush and really blend and soften that out. Got these lines, soften those out, and then we're going to add just a little bit of shadow coming up, pulling up, sorry, from the bottom. Hi littles, hi littles. All right, so we got our shadows in there. Now, if they went a little cray-cray, we are going to come in and we're going to play with our oranges a little bit so they could kind of fix it a little bit if they needed to. I like to come in here and just kind of streak a little bit more. Ooh. Okay, I'm going a little cray-cray here. I went a little bit too yellow, but it looks okay. Just kind of working around those eyes. If they get into the eyes, it's not the end of the world. Just redraw them back on. All right. Now, for his eyes, I'm painting in just need to draw these back in again a little bit. I'm going to paint in everything except like a little sliver at the bottom. Okay. I'm going to move down to the nose. And I've got my orange here. So I'm just going to do orange in the center. Make our little candy corn nose. A little yellow at the bottom and then white at top. So if you're yellow, you're going to want to use a little bit of white with it. This is going to get outlined later, so it doesn't have to be like perfect. And then a little white at the top. Okay, so we got our candy corn nose. This should be dry enough, or they can just, if they want, they can chalk this in, or they can just go for it. him his little mouth. Using brown and black. I usually don't use straight black very often. And we'll give him his little mouth opening. This is kind of dark in here. On the corners especially. Okay. And so while that's all drying, now would be a good time to come back up to the top with our white. And we're very loosely going to do like outlines. So really loose. And I usually tell people when they're trying to paint loose to hold their paintbrush out further away from the ferrule. We're going to do our little plaid kind of highlights. And our little patch. Boys. Bingo. Sorry, guys. Bingo. Enough. Oh, I forgot to put his little eyebrows in. Use a little bit of brown and black. Do his little eyebrows. Oh, that one won't show that much. And maybe just a couple little eyelashes. Okay. Do that. I'm going to do the outlining around the nose. A little brown and black. continue on with my white. All right, so loosely outline the side of the head. Can rub that finger over that to smear it a little bit. And then just a couple little highlights on the eyes. We've got the reflections in the eyes. I'll be putting a little blue in here in a sec. And then underneath, like in this bottom part, we want a little white down here. Maybe a little highlight on the nose. And a little highlight on a couple spots on the mouth. Let's see, anything else? Anything else? We could add just a few little highlights here and there. And the pumpkin. We're almost done. Let's see, I'm gonna add the blue of the eyes. So I would just use the dark blue. That'll work fine. And this is just gonna go right above the white. And let's see what else. Like I said, I forgot to put the hay coming out the side of the hat. Let's see. Here and there, like up in the hat, there's some areas where there's like little dabs of yellow. I just kind of give it a touch and a little rub here and there. I think I'm about done. If you did want to kind of explore maybe putting a little corn cob in there, I'll just show you that really quick. Kind of depending on how fast your class goes. If they're working right along and you think you have time, that could be kind of fun. So just for instance, like maybe I'll just make this little right here like into a actual like corn. Piece of corn. My green's kind of wrong, but I could fix it. So just kind of make that concave sort of shape, and then take your yellow and white and just kind of bricklay in here. Like so. So my green's kind of off. But yeah, if you wanted to make it look like there was actual corn in here, you could. You could do even like one down here. It's not like super it's just very loose. So anyway, okay, well, I am pretty much done with this painting. I think everybody will do great. It looks a little intimidating, but it's actually quite easy. So all right, have fun. I'm out of here.